And we're not going to do too much with any other kind of market like rent. What's the other one I'm thinking of here? Land. Well, that is rent, but thinking of this law school, right? The capital market now, the interest. We're not going to do too much with that either. The one that's discussed more often than not are the labor markets. So here are the three main types of resource markets. We're going to talk mainly about this first one. Okay? And so it doesn't matter what kind of market you're really talking about, you still will have this infamous big X curve, okay, where you've got the demand and the supply, whether it be for labor or land or capital, and in this case, financial capital. You're still going to have a supply for the particular item and a demand for those items. So I'm going to spend my time, the next couple of slides, series, just on labor. So these are called resource markets. This is the resource, the labor. The only difference here between the axes, we used to have price here, quantity there. Well, instead of the word price, for labor, it's going to be wage. That'll be the price. And for the quantity, it'll still be quantity. I might even put Q of L for the labor amount, labor quantity. Derived demand. What does derived demand mean? Well, resources in and of themselves are not going to make something or sell something. You've got to have the resources to produce. You need labor, you need land. But of themselves, there's not much to it. You're going to need another market that you sell the goods in. We call that the product market. And like the other drawing, it looks just like it. This is a supply and demand curve, and this is the product that you're selling. And in this case, yes, the equilibrium is the price and the quantity. We've seen that before. But the demand for the resources, this, labor, is derived from the demand in this market. We need to hire apple pickers, this example I'm going to use in my next slide or two, the table. We're going to need to hire apple pickers if we're selling a bunch of apples over here. So the demand for labor is derived from what's in this market. If we're selling a lot of iPads, I mean, that's kind of a tablet. They're popular items today in that particular product, whatever tablet it might be. Well, what kind of workers do you need? Yeah, technicians, computer programmers. I'm thinking of the software side of things. Yes, you'll need workers to kind of assemble the pieces together, to put them together and make the tablet, so manufacturing a little bit. But I'm thinking of the software and the programming part. You need those type of skilled workers that understand code and all that mumbo jumbo that I don't understand. With computers, I like computers, I like all kinds of stuff like that, but I don't want to know how to program. Just tell me how it works. I don't want to get inside the guts of it and try to figure it out. That's for somebody else to do. But you get the idea that the demand for labor, I'll put a cute little L here too, and then an L there for supply of labor. The demand for labor and the supply of labor is derived from what we sell over here. And the equilibrium wage rate is determined by how they interact with each other. Now the supply of labor, and this is where students get a little bit confused, the supply of labor is you. The demand for labor is by businesses. Businesses demand it. They want it. They desire to hire people. But you provide it. So there's where the interaction comes from. Maybe there's only 5 programmers in the world that program tablets. So there's not a big supply, is there? They're going to be in hot demand, more than likely. There's not that many of them. If you could find, I know when I was going to school back in the 80s, when I went to college, that is, I got an MBA, Master of Business Administration, and at that time, it was a rare degree, not as popular. It was a good degree, still is, but it's like I could probably find anybody with an MBA anymore. I mean, it's a very common degree. A lot of schools offer it, and might be able to go downtown Bradenton and find everybody who's walking down the street. Hey, you got to probably get an MBA, don't you? Yeah, MBA, everybody's got one. I'm making, in light of that, not everybody has an MBA, but it's more popular than it was in the 80s. It's not as, people with math degrees, I still think math is, people don't want to do math, and if you have a math degree, especially a master's or a PhD, you probably are very wanted by not only schools, but maybe also by corporations. There's a lot of math in almost everything, whether you want to think it or not. Okay, so here's the firm's demand for labor. I've been talking about this right now. Governed by the forces of supply and demand. Labor services are the inputs. That's you. You're providing those. Remember, the goal is to maximize profit for the firm. We're going to put together this production function, kind of something we had done before, but with this one, we're now going to look at the cost structure. And I think we talked about marginal product, average product, and we did this before. But it illustrates the relationship between the quantity of inputs, the labor, how many people we're going to hire, and the quantity of from the for our production. So an apple producer must decide each week how many apple pickers to hire to harvest the crop. And so we're going to add in the product and then the number of workers we might need. We're going to use the same concepts that we've been using. The marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That kind of still stays with us. The assumptions, though, we're going to consider in our model here, our table, that we're going to be perfectly competitive. You know, the reality of it is maybe it's not. In both the product and the labor market, in both markets. You know, sometimes this market, like if it's retail, it's not perfectly competitive. The labor market may not be perfectly competitive either. I mean, again, you might have kind of a more specific kind of degree. You got a degree in biotechnology. I mean, that's kind of a specific one. Is it necessary? I mean, we're offering an AA degree or AS degree here now. I think it's more, I think it's an AS. I don't even know what biotechnology is, so when they mentioned it a couple of years ago, they were going to start offering the program and the degree. I just went, okay, what is it? I don't know. Tell me if you got, anybody know? Okay, there you go. Out of 40 people, nobody knows what biotech is. But they sold it as a up-and-coming career path. I guess I'm cynical on certain things. I'm more traditional, you know, hey, get a degree in management, business, or math, or English, or just the basics. Okay, don't get too fancy with me. And I don't know, if more specifically, the labor market may not be perfectly competitive. There may be more supply or more demand for particular types of workers. The other assumption is we're going to make sure we're making a profit maximizing. All right, so here's the table. It's already filled out for you. Just want to go over the numbers with you. The question at the top says how much to hire. I'm also assuming the price per bushel is $10. $10 a bushel. The columns represent L is for labor. I'm using the L for labor because I didn't want to get it confused with the Q, or Q of L, quantity of output. That would be the next column. And I didn't want to get those two mixed up, so I just used the letter L for labor, the number of workers. Each apple picker we hire is going to pick a certain number of bushels per, well, yeah, we could say bushels. One person is going to be very busy. So the first person hired is going to pick 100 bushels of apples. We're going to assume some other things. I didn't really add it here to it, but we're going to assume that we've got one ladder and we've got a fixed physical capital. There's nothing else that we can use to make it faster. We just, it's all manual labor type of thing. One person picks 100, then you hire two people together, the two together, by shifting off, rotating. They pick 180. Then you hire a third person, they might pick 240. So we've had something like this before, back in the chapter on production and cost, before the cost. 4 people together, all together, we pick 280, and 5 people for 300. Now it's going up. It's all going up. I mean, it's increasing, but it's going up at a decreasing rate. I mean, it's starting to go up, and then it's starting to level off. So that's what the curve would look like. Kind of a humpback-looking curve, and then level off. And eventually, it would start to turn downward. The next column is something called the marginal product of labor. We haven't had this. And it's just taking the difference between each worker's production. So when you hired the first person, going from 0 to 1, that person produced 100 bushels, or picked 100 bushels of apples. That was their production. It was their marginal product of labor. The change in Q divided by the change in L. So 100 over 1. Then the second person hired, still the bottom number would be 1, the top number would be 80. So 80 over 1, and again you put it down in the next cell. And you do it for the rest of them. 60, 40, and 20 was the differences between each person that was hired. The next column is something, there's a couple words that can be used here. I've called it the value of the marginal product of labor, or in parentheses there, it's got an abbreviation MRP, which is called the marginal revenue product. I don't remember what your book put. Use value of marginal product of labor if you want. But here's the equation. Where do I get the numbers? You multiply the price per bushel, $10, times this column. So we'll take the price of 10 and multiply it all the way down. How we get the number in that column. It's telling me that, okay, that first person picked 100 bushels. The price per bushel was 10, so it's worth, value, $1,000. The second person picked an additional 80 together, or contributed an additional 80, marginal amount, times 10, contributed $800 more of value to the production. The third person contributed an additional 60, which times 10 would give you $600 of value. That's why I like to use the word value. I think it makes a little bit more sense. So each of these people are being added to the hiring. They're adding certain amounts of value. Now the question at the top says how many to hire, or how much to hire. Well, that next column, which is the wage, is going to determine your decision. Because the wage rate is given In this market, these are apple pickers. At 500 bucks. That's what the going rate is for an apple picker per week. I don't care which apple producer you go to, they're going to pay you 500 bucks a week. So it's perfectly competitive. There's many of this, there's a big supply of apple pickers, and there's just as much demand for any orchard out there. So, as you can see, this column, wage, and this abbreviation, just use wage, W for wage, but I've also put it in as marginal factor cost. It's just another way to refer to it as the wage. But it's all 500, same, no matter how many people you hire. Each person you hire, you're gonna pay like 500 bucks, 500 bucks, 500 bucks. So, the question remains, how much to hire? Well, now you go to the final column, and that's called your marginal profit. And it is the value of the marginal product of labor minus the wage. All you do is subtract to come up with the amount there. The marginal profit is not the same as your profit for the company. Like when you're thinking of the profits the company makes, total revenue minus total costs, that's not this. This is the marginal profit from hiring labor. Is it profitable to hire the first person? That's how you think about it for this guy. Sure, he's going to provide $1,000 worth of value. It's only going to cost us $500 to hire him. So we're benefiting, we're profiting $500 out of hiring him, marginally. It's okay, we'll hire that guy. Second person contributes $800 of additional value. Again, we're going to pay that person 500 bucks, contributing $300 of positive profit. So we would hire that person. Third person is going to contribute $600 of value. We'll pay him 500. Still going to make a profit, marginal profit that is, of $100 hiring that third guy or person. However, the fourth person, you can see that it changes. The fourth person only contributes an additional $400 of value to the production of picking apples. But we got to pay him $500 because that's the going wage rate. We actually are losing a marginal profit here. Negative 100. You would not hire this person. So you would stop at the third person because you're still making a marginal profit of that labor quantity. Again, don't get it confused with the profit of the company. Total revenue minus total cost. That's a different thing. This is just for wage or labor. So you wouldn't hire anything past 3 because it's all going to be negative after that. Now, I think I have another one of these, a little bit smaller table. It's harder to read. And it actually works out to be exactly 0 when you do the subtraction, which is actually better. But so I wanted to show both of them because you might see something like this on the test. You'll see a table definitely on the test. So what I've been talking about here in the past 10 minutes is what these next couple slides are about. It's just really saying what MPL is. It's the change in quantity over the change in labor. The diminishing marginal product of labor. As more workers are hired, the marginal product of labor declines. So you start to see it go down each time we hire somebody. As more and more workers are hired, each additional worker contributes less to the production. It's called the diminishing marginal returns. As if you hire more apple pickers, they might get in each other's way. You may not have the room, may not have it's all manual labor, and so it becomes more difficult and you're not as efficient because you don't have the space. To maximize profit, the firm hires workers up to the point. Anybody want to highlight this part? Up to the point where the value of the marginal product of labor is equal to the cost of the labor, the wage. Equal. Now, we didn't actually have one that was perfectly equal in that first table, but I do have it in the second one. second table. So this is what we're looking for. The value of the marginal product of labor must equal the wage. Another way to write that is the marginal revenue product must equal the marginal factor cost. And then finally, we can write it another way, remembering this, MR is equal to MC. It doesn't change. However, this is just applying to labor. So here's that second example that I wanted to show. A little bit smaller, I couldn't make the print any bigger there. You've got this is the demand for, I don't even know what they're producing. As you can see, the table, the demand curve is listed there, the demand for labor. And it goes down the same, it's number of TVs, that's what it is. Number of workers hired, how many TVs are we producing per week? Marginal product of labor, okay. Product price was $200 for the TV. Marginal product of labor, now this was, I told you, the MRP. Sometimes I like to call it the value of the marginal product of labor. Use that if you want. And then finally, the wage rate was $600. And additional profit, which is what I call marginal profit, from hiring one more worker, you just subtract. Now notice that this one actually works out to be even. I mean, when I say even, it works out to be exactly 0 at the fourth worker. The fourth worker contributed $600 of value. He gets paid a wage of $600. Minus 600 minus 600 equals 0. So that was the additional profit. But we would hire up to the point where it equals the wage. So in this case, we would hire the fourth worker. Remember the other table, we went from a positive 100 to a negative 100. There wasn't one that equaled 0 in between. So sometimes you see a table that works out just even, just right, where it's equal to 0, and sometimes you won't. But just be aware that you might see it both ways. You'll hire up to the point where it equals the wage. So here's the rule. If you like the value of the marginal product of labor better, you substitute, put this in. If the value of the marginal product of labor is greater than the wage, then the firm should hire more workers to increase profits. If the value of the marginal product of labor is less than the wage, then the firm should hire fewer workers to increase profits. You don't need to hire those people that you're making a negative marginal profit from. If it's equal to it, then the firm is hiring the optimal number of workers and is maximizing its profits. So you would hire 3 workers of apple pickers in my first example. In the other example, we would hire 4. TV repair or whatever makes TVs. What is labor market equilibrium? I kind of did it here. Yeah. So labor supply and labor demand together determine that equilibrium wage rate. They determine this $500 wage. The market does. But the curves can shift just like any other demand curve. Shifts in the supply and the labor curve for labor will cause that equilibrium wage rate to change. What causes the labor demand curve to shift? What causes this one to shift? Increases in human capital, the quality of labor, okay? People who are more educated, that's what that's saying. Some companies want to hire workers with a bachelor's degree only. And so they're looking for a more educated workforce, a worker. The demand for those kind of workers might increase to the right. I know my daughter works for Home Depot, and she is a manager, supervisor in a department, and she's like, they're looking for a senior analyst. The degree, you have to have a bachelor's degree, I believe, in finance or business. And she's been looking through some resumes. She even said, "Dad, you want to apply for the job?" I said, "No, I don't want to apply for the job." I'm qualified as far as education, but I've never worked in that particular kind of business. I think you got to have 2 years of experience, I think. But she said she saw somebody with a degree, bachelor's degree in like humanities or something. She just laughed because it's not what they want. The demand for the labor, the person, is that they want a bachelor's degree in finance or business, some accounting maybe. But the quality of labor will determine sometimes how much the demand might shift right or left. And it's going to shift just like any other demand curve. I'm going to do this. Okay. Shift out to the right, what happens to the wage? Equal, went up. Okay? Assuming the supply stays the same. If there's less people who are available. The other cause of the labor demand curve is this change over here. What if iPads and tablets became less popular? The demand for those things. In other words, now this is the product. The demand falls, shifts back to the left. Nobody wants them. It's not popular. They're garbage. Then what's going to happen in the labor market? If nobody's buying them, there's no need to hire people to make them. So then the labor market is going to see the demand for those workers shift to the left. Don't need them. Nobody buys these things over here. Blake. Hello. Wait. Blake, can you move your backpack? Thank you. All right. So the other thing is the output, the final price of the good might also be a factor. If it's too expensive, sometimes that changes the demand for labor. Technological changes advance. That'll also, again, anybody heard of a TV repairman?
It's too.
Yeah?
No, it's too costly.
Costly.
It's
Okay.
She could actually just replace it.
Just replace the whole TV, right? Yeah. Well, the reason I brought that up, when I was a kid growing up, back in the 60s and 70s, they had the TVs were made, they had these transistor tubes in them, in the back. And there was a TV repairman. You would call him up, and I remember the guys come out and he'd get all his tools, and he'd replace these silly transistors on the back of the TV to get it to work. Well, TV repairmen are like a dying breed. There's no such a thing. You just might replace the whole TV, throw it out. Of course, we don't have transistors anymore. They're like computer boards. The whole thing. I would assume you might be able to replace that whole board and just put another one in. But you're saying it's cheaper just to buy a new one. It's too costly to hire somebody. So the labor market for TV repairmen have become dying. I mean, it's like the dinosaurs. They just died off. There's probably other kinds of services and jobs that have died off because the product or the service necessary it's not necessary. It's not needed anymore. We live in a throwaway society. Just everything is disposable anymore. So sometimes those maintenance or service types of jobs that once existed do not exist. But we do have new service types of jobs. We have jobs now that during Christmas time, I saw it a couple years ago. I don't know how popular it is, but somebody had put up signs that said we will put up your Christmas lights for free. I mean, not for free, for a fee. It's a service. Nobody, it's kind of for me, putting lights up is, for kids, fun. If you have family, that's okay. It's the taking them down that's a pain. Because, the kids will help you put them up because they like it, and the lights are on and all that. But there's not, everybody scatters when you got to take them down. Dad ends up taking them down. So I always hated to put them up because I know the end result would be, who's going to take them down?
You.
Me. I don't want to put them up. I'll be Scrooge this year. So it ended up, so that kind of job, there's people out there that'll do it for you. They'll do it for you. They provide a service. I don't know how how successful it is. I don't know if there really are that many people that utilize that service, but it's just something different. The supply of other factors or resources, and then the number of firms in the market. All of these are just factors that are going to cause that demand for labor curve to shift right or left, causing the wage to go up or down. Supply can also shift. Households supply the labor. I said you supply the labor. You allocate your time to work or to leisure. And it's a lifelong trade-off for you. I mean, you go through your whole life trying to decide what is that labor-leisure trade-off. How much labor, how much time do I want to work? How much leisure do I want to take? Obviously, you're going to be able to make some money to enjoy yourself, to take some leisure time. Well, the supply curve sometimes looks like a backward bending curve because a person is willing and able to work more hours as the wage rate increases until at some sufficiently high wage, the person chooses to work fewer hours because now you feel like, okay, got enough money, make enough money, now I need to take a little time off. Now I want to enjoy life. This actually happens too when you get older. You know, when you're young, you're kind of saying, okay, I'm going to work, I'm going to make a lot of my daughter's like that right now. She's making a lot of money, I mean, she's making, wage is going up, and she's, providing, but she'll get to the point where, hey, money's not everything, and maybe you want to enjoy life and do some things. A person feels that he or she has enough income and would rather have more leisure time. At high enough wage rates, you can afford to take more leisure time. Now here's a backward bending supply curve. I actually think the curve should look slightly different. And this is just one drawing of it. The curve probably would do more of a, it comes up to here, more of a really drop off there. More of a straight across. Because this is the number of hours. So when you work a lot, more hours are going up. You're making more wages are going up too. But at some sufficiently high wage, you're not going to keep making a higher wage. You'll probably stabilize right there. It's called retirement. You get to a point and you go, okay, it's going to be more of a fixed amount. Or you just say, hey, this is enough. I don't want to make any more money. I'm satisfied at this amount. I want to take some time off. So I think it's more of a really abrupt wage instead of an increasing wage. Factors that shift the labor supply curve, so factors that will shift this curve right or left, will do the same thing, which will affect the wage equilibrium, up or down. Increases in population. Just the sheer fact that more population means that we're more households, more people are going to provide labor. Shift to the right. That's a slow shift. I mean, that's going to always, as long as we have increases. Changes in opportunities. Changes in job types, like that tablet example, that they didn't exist 20 years ago. And now they do, and so you need workers in that particular industry. Increases, decreases in other professions lead to changes in supply. Changes in preferences and social norms. Changes in people's taste. That's what preferences represents. Large increase in women, working women, since the 1960s. It'll all shift this curve right or left. More women working, now it's a bigger, they enter the workforce, shift to the right. As more women enter the workforce. Changes in wealth. Now this might make the supply of labor go the other way, because when people are making money in other avenues, like in real estate, now they got lots of money, selling real estate. Maybe they sold their properties, and so there's no need to work, so they're not supplying the labor. They're just sitting back and having a grand old time. During the mid-2000s, when the real estate market was actually good, people were making a lot of money. I mean, just normal people. Not even professionals or developers, everybody, they were making money too. But you could buy a house and flip it, put a little bit into it, flip it and make 70, 100,000 real quick. That's how the real estate market was. It was nuts. I almost did it too. I got cold feet though. I backed off because it was I was going to buy a condo and use it as an investment and flip it. But I'm glad I backed out because the condo prices where it is now went. I mean, there's no way. I would never be able to get my money back out of that. I mean, I might, be 30 years later. But your wealth, if you become more wealthy, it takes, then now you're going to take more leisure time because you say, I don't need to work. So supply of labor might shift back this way overall. So it'll shift too. But the point is all of these curves shift right or left, demand for labor, supply of labor. And in the next set of slides, the wage determination slides, because that was the last slide, we're going to talk more about how wages are determined, and it's just kind of some interesting points to be made. There's things about discrimination, and I'll bring those up on Monday. So I'd rather not start that series until then. I'll start them on Monday to start right from the beginning, okay?